Well, to say that something is wrong with the situation that we have now in America would not be accurate. Uh, Time moves rather rapidly, and the time when immigrants from Eastern Europe and from Orthodox countries began to appear on these shores, it's over 100 years now. In some instances, down through Alaska, it's approaching 200 years. Uh, and the development of Orthodox Christian communities by these ethnic groups to preserve their faith and to preserve their heritage, I think was a remarkable thing, a remarkable accomplishment on their part, which they had to undertake uh, fairly much on their own. Uh, Most of the other countries were involved in various problems of survival at the time of their coming to this country. And the immigrants who came here, in addition to participating in the building up of this country and taking positions in the rank of immigrants, the next group that were starting to occupy positions in the coal mines and in the steel mills and other backbreaking labor. So it became clear to them that most of them would not be returning home with money that they earned, but that they were here to stay. And when they realized that, they began to develop their communities on a much more serious basis beyond the forming of benevolent organizations or fraternal organizations for mutual help. In many cases, they would take the bylaws that they created for those benevolent organizations and change the front page and name it St. George or St. Michael's or St. John's Orthodox Church of whatever their ethnic background was. And because of the difficulties, economic situation in which they were in, where they worked for 10 cents an hour at backbreaking labor, the means by which they were at their disposal was to buy churches that others had vacated and convert them to Orthodox churches. Few were able to develop enough resources to build a church of their own, but if they did, they were simple wooden churches that they were able to provide for the needs of their spiritual needs, for worship, for the sacraments, for baptisms and marriages, and especially for funerals, because they were living in dangerous times when before the turn of the times of the Industrial Revolution. So before they were able to acquire homes and so forth, World War II was upon them. And in most cases, this affected the homelands from where they came. And this being the case, they managed to preserve their identity, to preserve the faith, and to provide havens for those who were coming as another wave of emigration after World War II. And then, of course, the making accommodations for the sons who were returning from the war, who survived the war, returning home, marrying, and providing place for their children to have a Christian education. And this is where mutual cooperation began to be discerned among other Orthodox groups collaborating. They were left to their own devices for a while, but very soon they began to see the need for producing material in the English language. And each ethnic group did reserve the right for producing whatever it was of their own culture and their own heritage to make available to their children in order to preserve their heritage. But the religious curriculum was being developed now by mutual help or mutual cooperation among the Orthodox groups. Now, our people did not have that much of an opportunity for interaction between Orthodox jurisdictions. A lot of times they would be aware that there was a Greek church, or there was a Russian church, or there was an Antiochian church, or a Serbian church, and they would see one another at least once a year when their clergy would invite them to attend a central location of a large church that was large enough for celebrating of the Sunday of Orthodoxy. And that was about the extent of their interaction at that time. And soon thereafter, it became apparent that we had a great deal in common, being of the Orthodox faith, and the church was here to stay. So the bishops at that time wisely got together and formed what is called the Standing Conference of Canonical Orthodox Bishops, so that they could preserve the canonical order and mutual Orthodox discipline among themselves, and to have a respect for one another's traditions and jurisdictions and so forth. And they did a remarkable job in building up their communities and in propagating the faith. And they were really the builders of orthodoxy on this continent. Because they made it possible to receive new immigrants, and they were already now situated, had a church and a cultural center, an ethnic center. So, and these people were coming now into better economic situations than they found originally. So they were able to generate the resources to begin to build churches of their own architectural traditions and cultural heritage. And it was absolutely amazing and remarkable at what they were able to accomplish. And as years went on, it became obvious that Orthodoxy had a message, had something to say to the environment and country in which they found themselves, their children, now grandchildren, and you have now 5 or 6 generations that were born here in this country, in addition to new immigrants. So the mission of the church is to make itself, to propagate the faith, to preserve it, and to live it, and then to propagate it through ways that are acceptable and consistent with the Orthodox method of propagating and teaching the faith, not through proselytizing, but the Apostle Philip said to Nathanael, "Come and see." And people who would come and see would like what they saw, especially if they could understand it if it was in English. So it became obvious that the need for prayer books and other liturgical texts to be available in English, for parish bulletins to be bilingual, to satisfy the need of the local constituents. And the churches are still, for the most part, bilingual. That's here to stay with us for a little while longer. And the mission of the church is continuing. Now, this would naturally give rise to questions like, well, when are all these jurisdictions going to merge into one jurisdiction? And this takes on different types of discussions and proposals and anxieties and fears. What does this mean? What are the implications? Or does that mean we're going to have to lose our cultural heritage and melt into some type of a melting pot of some unknown practice and so forth? So you have all of these variables in dealing with this question of church unity. We maintain very strongly that we are one church. We're not a divided church. We all profess exactly the same faith, but it's expressed in all of our traditions through our own heritage, which has become thoroughly Orthodox.